Michigan is chock full of exceptional architecture, and the tradition is continuing across our state. One Michigan architecture firm is doing its part to create beautiful, artful buildings while also assisting nonprofits in the Great Lakes state. Joining us now is the owner of Fusco, Shaffer and Pappas Incorporated, architects and planners, James Pappas. James, thank you for being with us today.
Good morning, Tyler. Thank you for having me on the program.
Appreciate having you on. So tell us first about your business, about Fusco, Shaffer and Pappas Architects, and some of the different designs that you have been part of, or your company has been part of here in the state of Michigan.
Well, thank you. Our firm is located in Ferndale, Michigan, and we have a staff of 30 people. Then approximately half of our work is with nonprofit organizations throughout southeastern Michigan. Some of those include the Pope Francis, and we're working on the new Pope Francis Center in the city of Detroit. Other organizations include neighborhood service organizations, and we're working with them on a new shelter currently under construction in the city of Detroit as well. Other groups include Presbyterian Villages of Michigan. We are working with them on multiple projects throughout the state. And organizations like Lighthouse in Pontiac that provide services to homeless individuals as well as people in need. So we've, over the years, we've made a conscious effort to try to work with nonprofit organizations and assist them in their journey of helping people in need.
So where did that motivation, or where did that effort for your company start? Because I would think it's pretty unconventional for an architecture firm like yours to put that kind of work in for charities and nonprofits on top of regular clients that you're also supporting.
Well, when we work with these organizations, it's not on just a pro bono basis. There is, there is funding for the project, so we do get paid to work on the majority of these projects, but it's still we've made that effort, like I said, over the years, purposely. I think it started really when I joined the firm many years ago with Jude Fusco, who was the founder of the firm, and he's been passed away now, but kind of instilled in me the importance of working with organizations like that, and it continued it to this day.
And so these organizations, they're typically on very fixed dollar amount for what they can put into projects such as this to improve their buildings, let alone to build new facilities entirely. How does that for a firm like yours to be able to put its plans into fruition, but also fit the vision of these different organizations? How are you able to balance that, knowing that some projects may go over budget, some projects may be under budget in any architecture or planning situation, but especially for nonprofits, knowing that they have very specific needs and typically there's not a whole lot of flexibility there?
That's very true. Going into these projects, we typically have a fixed budget, and there really is no additional resources that you can go back and secure additional funds. So it's important that we work very closely with these organizations. They have a vision that it's our responsibility to achieve that vision as best we can. But we're still locked into, budget, so that we need to develop our designs that fit the criteria of the budget as well as our vision. It's a balancing act that, that in any architectural project, there's always a budget, and you have to balance that with the vision of the client.
So we recently spoke with Aisha Morrell Ferguson from Cots Detroit, one of the many great charities and nonprofits in the state of Michigan, and you're actually working on a project with them at this time. Can you tell us about that project and the ways that your architecture firm is helping support the vision of this particular charity and nonprofit?
The Cots project was a unique project. It's located on Peterborough, just off of Woodward. It's a high-rise building that was in need of renovation, and utilizing tax credit dollars as well as historical tax credit and low-income tax credit and several other sources through the city of Detroit and other organizations. We were able to do a complete renovation on the building, maintain many of the historical elements. It was originally built as a hotel many years ago. And then we were able to renovate the building into an adaptive reuse to utilize it as supportive housing for individuals that were previously homeless.
We're joined by James Pappas, the CEO and owner of Fusco, Shaffer and Pappas Incorporated, architects and planners, joining us on the MegaCast. You also mentioned earlier you've been doing work on the Pope Francis Center as well. Can you tell us about that project and the ways that your business is helping to impact their facility?
Pope Francis is just a wonderful organization run by Father Tim McCabe, a unique and amazing individual that had a vision to create bridge housing for those homeless individuals in the city of Detroit that have fallen through the cracks and not been able to get any housing in any other manner. We've worked closely with his vision to create that concept design. And I can tell you, we are just about to start construction. We've had a groundbreaking, and we're finalizing all the steps for permitting and construction that is starting shortly. It's a wonderful organization.
So what is the process for these different projects when you're working with a nonprofit organization versus a more traditional sort of clientele, like a business or a developer? How does that approach happen differently when you're working with a charity or nonprofit versus another client?
Well, with the nonprofits, the funding sources are your typical client utilizes a conventional financing, through a bank or lending source. Where a nonprofit, there's really two options. They can utilize some type of government type funding, whether it be through the federal or state governments, and donations. The Pope Francis, for example, is being funded 100% by donations to the organization. So there's the process of collecting donations and simultaneously working through the design process to a point that the ownership team felt secure that they could actually start construction now with enough dollars in hand to safely move forward and not have any delays during the construction process.
So we've talked multiple times in our discussion so far about budgeting and how that fixed budget for these nonprofits and their projects is a big factor in the design and the execution of these building projects. So I would think that efficiency in the execution of those plans is important, but also in the designs themselves. Can you give us some insight on some of the designs that your company has done for these different nonprofits that's incorporated some sort of efficiency into that design that allows for multiple uses of one area versus another, or some flexibility for these nonprofits so that they can get as much use out of their facilities that they are working with you on as possible?
It's a good example of that is the Pope Francis Center. All of the spaces, for example, there's a dining space, but it's also designed in such a way that it can be used for gathering activities, group activities, and even outside community activities. There is a gymnasium as part of that design that is going to be utilized for the residents as well as for the community to use on certain times. And then that same space, when the weather is bad, can be used as an overflow shelter space. So that as we design these spaces, you're absolutely correct that we need to keep in mind that spaces need to be functional, multiple uses, and not so that they can be in use as much of the time as possible.
We're joined by James Pappas, the CEO and owner of Fusco, Shaffer and Pappas Incorporated, architects and planners, joining us on the MegaCast. Earlier this week, during Mayor Mike Duggan of Detroit's State of the City address, he recognized your architecture firm's projects, including the Friendship Meadows, University Meadows, Transfiguration Place, Brainerd Apartments, and Peterborough Arms. Can you talk about each of these projects and your work in the city of Detroit to help assist with their resurgence down there, because Detroit was never gone. It's not coming back. It's resurging, and it's kind of reforming itself into the future.
Well, and there's a combination on these projects. Several of them were renovations of existing buildings, and that's an important piece of the resurgence in the city of Detroit. Some of these buildings were occupied but in need of substantial renovation. Others were unoccupied or in a state of disrepair and needed substantial. And some of them were new construction. But as you mentioned, all those, the Transfiguration one was a unique building. Maybe I'll just highlight that one a little bit. In the city of Detroit, it was a former Catholic school that had been closed for a number of years, and we got involved with that project and converted it to residential units. Just a unique space. Each classroom was converted to a complete one-bedroom apartment, and again, the target occupancy for that again is supportive housing. Again, targeting individuals that may have been previously homeless. So it's a win-win. You had a vacant school building that, you take any building, and if you leave it vacant, it gets into a state of disrepair. And by this conversion and adaptive reuse, and now we've got a viable living space for a number of people.
Yeah, and that's what's so great about a lot of these projects is it's taking that historical architecture of the city of Detroit without adulterating it or replacing it entirely. It's maintaining that architecture, that unique Detroit identity visually, while also providing great purpose to the city. And of course, those projects that are providing home spaces for living spaces for the homeless are a huge benefit to the city of Detroit, as they would be in any major city. We're joined by James Pappas, the owner of Fusco, Shaffer and Pappas Incorporated, architects and planners, joining us on the MegaCast. And let's have you touch on that real briefly, the maintenance of that architectural identity of Detroit. And some of these buildings that you are going into, or that other architects and other firms are going into to redesign or to repurpose. Part of that, of course, a big part is the functionality. You want to make that a functional space for whatever purpose it's going to be used going forward. But like I said, Detroit has its own unique architectural identity. So how do you work to maintain that architectural identity while also bringing utility to these spaces for the future?
It's critical especially on buildings with historical significance, as you mentioned, that we make every effort and work closely with the project's historical consultant as well as the state SHPO office, so that the historical integrity of the building is maintained. Elements of the exterior facade, the window designs, as well as interior components. We're currently starting work on a project called Lee Plaza. And the exterior historical significance as well as the interior. It's just a grandiose building that the ultimate goal here is to restore it back to its original historical elements and historical beauty.
James, any more interesting projects coming up with your firm that we should be on the lookout for in the near future?
Well, the one I just mentioned, the Lee Plaza, I believe the mayor did mention that project, and it's one we're just getting into the design phase on. It sits right on the boulevard, and it's very visible it's on West Grand Boulevard near Grand River, and very visible because it's one of the few high rises in that area. So keep an eye open for that one, and as the renovation starts, you'll see one of Detroit's gems brought back to life.
James, thank you so much for joining us and talking about these great projects that you're working on and some more designs we will be seeing in the very near future.
Thank you so much, Tyler.